The mystical truths in religions East and West are brought to light again and made relevant for our time by Elizabeth Clare Prophet, world-renowned author and spiritual teacher.
What does the flame in the heart have to do with the path of discipleship in the Aquarian age?
There have been disciples of Christ and of Buddha for thousands of years. Even before the coming of Christ and Buddha, there were followers of the essential flame of God. Discipleship, then, can best be studied in the lives of the great disciples of East and West. I was thinking this morning of St. John of the Cross, who wrote The Living Flame of Love. The fulfillment of his life was the discovery of this intense love of God, whereby God gives himself totally to his servant, and the servant gives himself totally to God. And in this consummation of love, there is a fusion whereby God becomes man and man becomes God. This is only possible through the threefold flame in the heart. It is only possible because God has already endowed us with sonship by placing within us that portion of the Christ, the only begotten of the Father, Mother God. John the Beloved, who was the closest disciple of Jesus, the true mystic of the 12, understood this joint heirship, and he understood that now are we the sons of God. The implication here is that we have been endowed with the same essential flame of the light and of the Word which Jesus had. And this is our moment, our hour of initiation to draw forth that flame through Jesus, through Saint Germain, through Gautama Buddha, through Mother Mary, through all of the sons and daughters who have found the same key to unlock the potential of God. And that key is this flame within the heart. Discipleship, then, is a very important relationship, because the disciple who places himself under the tutelage of a master, an ascended master, let us say, of Jesus, stands in line to receive not only the training and the teaching, but the very consciousness of God, of his own master. This hierarchical relationship has been known as that of the guru and the chela in the East, and as the master and the disciple in the West. It is a path that has been outlined. It is known in every way. Buddha had his closest disciples. Elijah had his disciple Elisha, who received his mantle when he was taken up in a chariot of fire. Elisha then went forth and smote the waters of the river Jordan with that mantle. The significance of the mantle is the momentum. It represents the attainment or the realization of God of the teacher, which at a certain point the teacher passes on to the disciple. The teacher withdraws, and the disciple then holds the key position of teacher to those who are coming after. In this manner, the traditions of the Buddha, the Christ, have been handed down to us from teacher to pupil all through the ages. What I'd like to talk about in terms of discipleship are the many paths that are open to us as we pursue the way back home.
We've talked about the 7 rays, and I'm wondering what the 7 rays have to do with this concept of discipleship that you mentioned.
Well, in order to accelerate the consciousness of God within us and to magnetize the flame of the ascension, each of us as a disciple must attain to a certain mastery on each of these 7 rays. What are the 7 rays? The 7 rays come out of the white light of the Holy Spirit. You might say that the Holy Spirit is the full complement of all of the rays of the Christ consciousness. As we walk toward the fullness of the expression of the Holy Spirit, we are required to discipline ourselves on one of these 7 rays. From the first to the 7, these rays are noted by the spectrum of color which we see in the rainbow. And so the first ray would be the ray of God's will, which has a frequency which vibrates in the spectrum of blue. Those who serve on this ray are those who are inclined to lead, to govern, to administer, to organize, and to execute. And they are very much concerned with the order and the energy of God's will. They are great devotees of the will of God. Even if they may not call it the will of God, they insist upon order and system in their lives, and they are very devoted to this order. The chohan, which simply means Lord, the Lord of this ray, the one who is the teacher of disciples who serve on this ray, is the ascended master El Morya. El Morya was embodied as St. Thomas More, a great devotee of the will of God. His retreat is in Darjeeling, India, and there he receives chelas or disciples of the will of God who may journey to this retreat while their bodies sleep, as the soul takes leave of the body in the etheric envelope and becomes a part of the cosmic schoolroom. The second ray, the ray of wisdom, vibrates in the color spectrum of yellow. It is the focus of illumination, the illumined action of God. Its chohan or Lord is Lanto. Many servants of the wisdom of God have been the teachers of mankind through the ages. Lord Lanto serves from the retreat of the Royal Teton in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is congruent with the Grand Teton. This is the ray of those who teach, who understand, and who know God through this illumined action of his wisdom and the wisdom of his law. These are the quiet souls, like St. Francis of Assisi, who, as the ascended master Kuthumi, occupy the position of chohan of this ray until recently when Kuthumi became a world teacher. Lord Lanto's evolution was in ancient China, and there, through the wisdom schools, he drew forth the light of the heart. All of those who are seeking to know God by the mind of Christ and the mind of Buddha are followers and disciples on this ray. The third ray is the love of God, the very essence of this consummation of oneness in the Holy Spirit. Through this ray, whose spectrum and frequency is pink and rose, come the artists, those who are the creative, sensitive, and intuitive souls. These are the ones who serve mankind through love, through charity and compassion, and they find their oneness with a greater self in many creative avenues. The Lord of this ray is Paul the Venetian, who was embodied as Paolo Veronese, the great Italian artist. Art, sculpture, and all forms of self-expression are disciplined by Paul as he receives disciples in his retreat, the Château de Liberté, which is in southern France. The fourth ray extols the purity of God and his discipline. Disciples of this ray come under the disciplines of Serapis Bey, whose retreat is the Ascension Temple at Luxor, Egypt. This white flame is the way of those who would contact the blueprint, the inner design of their handiwork, and in the honor and the integrity of the soul's oneness with the law of perfection, they pursue the discipline of the mastery of their sacred labor, the work of their hands, which is the work of the Father, Mother God through them. These are the disciplined ones who are seeking ultimate reunion through the greatest sacrifice of the self. This is the way of those who commune in the wholeness of the consciousness of the Divine Mother through purity of body, mind, and soul. The color white, of course, embodies all of the rays, and therefore, ultimately, the disciplines of each of the 7 rays bring one to this doorway, to the ascension, the soul's eternal liberation. The 5th ray is the ray of truth and the science of God. It is the ray of healing and abundance. Its chohan, or Lord, is Hilarion, who was embodied as the Apostle Paul, and his retreat is the Temple of Truth on the etheric plane, congruent with the island of Crete. On this ray, scientists, doctors, healers, mathematicians, musicians pursue a scientific mastery of the self and of the planes of spirit and matter. This they do through the quest for truth in every discipline, including the healing arts. And so, the fifth ray becomes the means whereby those who require the logic of the Logos can find their way back to the Christ consciousness, back to the God design. The sixth ray is the ray of the Master Jesus, of peace and the ministration of God. It is the way of the selfless servant. Jesus for 2,000 years has served as the Lord of this ray and has ministered to the evolutions whose way is the way of overcoming as he taught it. Now, as this 2,000-year cycle is turning, Jesus serves as world teacher, and the beloved chohan Nada has become the Lord of this ray. This, then, is the way of those who minister in the energies of peace to the evolutions of earth, as counselors and comforters in every walk of life. Their inner vow is, I am my brother's keeper, and their sole motto is, he that would be great among you, let him be the servant of all. The color frequency is the spectrum of both purple and gold. The purple and gold, the twin flames of the Christhood on this sixth ray. The seventh ray is the ray of freedom and the forgiveness of God through the alchemy of the Holy Spirit. It is the way of the priests of the order of Melchizedek. It is also the way of those who are one with the great dramatist, God himself, who has conceived of the world as a stage upon which we all play our roles. The alchemy of the seventh ray is of the Aquarian age. It is truly the way of soul freedom, and its chohan, or Lord, is Saint Germain, who is known as the God of freedom to the earth, the master of the Aquarian cycle. Saint Germain is the scientist who sponsors invention, innovation, great genius, and the mastery of the matter plane through technology. But he teaches the law of selflessness and non-attachment so that science can never become a dead materialism, but a materialization of the God flame, whereby we realize in matter the fullness of the living God.
Thank you very much.
This is a presentation of the Summit Lighthouse, an international spiritual organization dedicated to universal enlightenment. Founded in 1958, the Summit Lighthouse is a beacon of truth to thousands worldwide and a leader in New Thought spirituality.